drives to the snowplow. This one drives.
March 1993. A senior General Motors executive books a flight to Germany. He tells General Motors he's going to visit his mother. He never comes back. And when General Motors finally understood what José Ignacio López had taken with him when he walked out of that door, the number that came back was so large, so staggering, so personal that it didn't feel like corporate espionage anymore. It felt like betrayal at a level that the automotive industry had never experienced before and hasn't fully recovered from since. This isn't just a story about stolen documents. This is a story about one man, one decision made somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean, and how that decision nearly destroyed two of the most powerful car companies on the planet and changed the way the entire automotive industry thinks about trust, loyalty, and the dangerous knowledge that lives inside the people who build your cars. This is the Lopez Affair, the billion-dollar blueprint heist that almost nobody outside the industry talks about. And it's time to change that. The man who made cars cheaper. To understand why José Ignacio López was worth stealing, because make no mistake, that's exactly what Volkswagen did, you have to understand what López actually was inside General Motors. López wasn't just an executive. López wasn't just a procurement chief with a fancy title in a corner office. López was, by the early 1990s, one of the most genuinely feared cost-cutting minds in the global automotive industry. The man had a methodology, a system, a brutal, relentless, almost religious approach to stripping cost out of every single component that went into building a car. General Motors called the program Picos, and Picos was López's creation, a supplier management philosophy so aggressive that it reportedly made parts manufacturers physically uncomfortable to be in the same room as him. López would sit across from a supplier who had held a GM contract for years, look at their pricing, and demand they cut it. Not suggest, not negotiate, demand. And then demand they cut it again. Suppliers who couldn't meet López's numbers lost their contracts. Full stop. No sentiment, no relationship history. Numbers either worked or they didn't. Inside General Motors, López was simultaneously celebrated and feared. General Motors was bleeding money in the early 1990s, posting losses that shocked Wall Street and triggered genuine conversations about whether the company could survive in its current form. López and his Picos methodology were seen as a genuine lifeline, a way to close the cost gap with Japanese manufacturers who were building better cars for less money and systematically taking market share that General Motors had assumed was permanently theirs. López was, in short, exactly the kind of man that a struggling competitor would do almost anything to acquire. And Volkswagen was watching. The phone call that started everything. Ferdinand Piëch had taken over as Volkswagen's chairman in 1993 and inherited a company in genuine crisis. Volkswagen was losing money. Volkswagen's costs were catastrophically high compared to Japanese rivals. Volkswagen needed someone who could do what General Motors' own leadership had been publicly praising López for doing, systematically, ruthlessly, structurally reducing what it cost to build a car. The approach Volkswagen made to López was direct. Come to Volkswagen, bring your methods, save the company. What happened next is where the story moves from aggressive corporate recruiting into something that the FBI would eventually take a very serious interest in. López resigned from General Motors in March 1993. That part was legal. Executives move between companies. That's business. What allegedly happened in the days surrounding that resignation was something else entirely. 20 cartons of confidential General Motors documents allegedly left with López and a small group of colleagues who followed him to Volkswagen. Not general industry knowledge, not the kind of broad expertise that lives in someone's head after years in the industry. Specific documents, detailed plans for the next generation Opel Corsa, precise factory cost structures, supplier lists with pricing information that General Motors had spent years and enormous resources developing. The complete operational blueprint of General Motors' competitive future, allegedly sitting in 20 cardboard boxes heading to Germany. The moment General Motors knew. General Motors didn't figure it out immediately, but suspicion built quickly, and the moment it crystallized into something General Motors could point to was the moment General Motors started recognizing itself in its direct competitor, Picos, General Motors' own cost-cutting methodology. The program that Lopez had built inside General Motors was appearing inside Volkswagen's supplier relationships. The language was the same, the structure was the same. The specific pressure points that Lopez had identified as levers inside General Motors' supply chain were being pulled in exactly the same sequence at Volkswagen. General Motors wasn't watching Volkswagen adopt similar practices. General Motors was watching Volkswagen use General Motors' practices, word for word, process for process. The lawsuits that followed were some of the most aggressive legal action ever taken in the automotive industry. General Motors filed criminal complaints in Germany, the FBI opened an investigation in the United States, and then came the detail that turned a corporate dispute into something that felt genuinely cinematic. Shredded documents, found in circumstances that investigators described as deeply suspicious. Paper fragments in a house connected to the Lopez circle that, when partially reconstructed, appeared to contain General Motors' technical data that had no legitimate reason to be anywhere near anyone connected to Volkswagen. The shredding had been recent enough that investigators believed it happened after the legal proceedings began, after someone understood that the documents needed to disappear. The Lopez effect, when the cuts went too deep. Here's the part of the Lopez affair that the automotive press largely missed at the time, buried under the drama of FBI raids and billion-dollar legal threats. The cost-cutting actually worked at Volkswagen. In the short term, the efficiency gains were real. Volkswagen's cost structure improved, Volkswagen's financial position stabilized. Ferdinand Piëch got the turnaround numbers he needed. But Lopez's methodology had a flaw that General Motors had been in the process of discovering before Lopez left, a flaw that Volkswagen now inherited along with the method. When you cut supplier costs past a certain point, suppliers start making their own decisions. Decisions about materials, decisions about tolerances, decisions about which corners can be quietly trimmed without anyone noticing immediately. And in the automotive industry, immediately is doing a lot of work in that sentence, because the consequences of those decisions don't show up on an assembly line. They show up in living rooms and driveways 2 or 3 years later when the car starts telling the truth about what it's actually made of. Late 1990s and early 2000s Volkswagen became notorious for quality problems that felt almost inexplicable for a brand with Volkswagen's reputation. Windows that dropped unexpectedly into door cavities, soft-touch interior plastics that began peeling within years of purchase, electrical gremlins that dealers struggled to diagnose because the root cause was component quality that had been value-engineered past the point of reliability. Volkswagen owners who had bought into the brand's premium positioning felt genuinely deceived. Volkswagen's reliability rankings collapsed. The brand spent years and enormous resources rebuilding a quality reputation that Lopez's cost-cutting had quietly dismantled. He hadn't just stolen General Motors' blueprints, he had stolen General Motors' mistakes. And Volkswagen paid for those mistakes in warranty claims, brand damage, and customer trust that took a decade to rebuild. The settlement that ended nothing. In 1997, after years of legal warfare conducted across 2 continents and 3 jurisdictions, Volkswagen and General Motors reached a settlement. Volkswagen agreed to pay General Motors $100 million. Volkswagen also agreed to purchase $1 billion worth of General Motors parts over the following 7 years. Lopez himself faced criminal proceedings in Germany that dragged on for years before ultimately resulting in outcomes that many observers considered underwhelming given the scale of what had occurred. General Motors never fully accepted that justice had been served. The $100 million settlement was real money, but against the value of what General Motors claimed had been taken, against the competitive damage of watching a direct rival use your own operational intelligence against you, the number felt more like acknowledgement than consequence. And Lopez? Lopez eventually left Volkswagen in 1996, resigned under the weight of the ongoing investigations. The man who had been welcomed into Volkswagen as a hero, celebrated in German business press as the savior of one of Europe's most important manufacturers, left quietly. The legal proceedings that followed him continued for years afterward. What the Lopez Affair actually changed. The Lopez Affair didn't just damage General Motors and Volkswagen. The Lopez Affair permanently changed how the automotive industry thinks about knowledge, about what lives inside the people who build your cars, about the information that walks out the door every single time an executive changes jobs. Non-disclosure agreements became more aggressive. Transition protocols between competing manufacturers became more structured. The specific question of what a departing executive knows versus what a departing executive can prove they took became a specialization unto itself. Every major automotive manufacturer that watched the Lopez Affair unfold in real time made internal changes, quietly, without press releases, because the Lopez Affair had demonstrated something that the industry preferred not to say out loud: that the most valuable thing inside any car company isn't the cars, it's the knowledge of how to build them cheaper than anyone else. Before you go, if the Lopez Affair just changed how you think about the cars sitting in your driveway, hit that like button. The automotive industry's darkest stories deserve to be heard, and every like pushes this channel's work in front of someone who's never heard this story before. Subscribe right now if you're not already here. This channel exists for exactly this: the betrayals, the cover-ups, the decisions made in boardrooms and airport lounges that shaped every car you've ever driven. Drop a comment below. Did you know the Lopez Affair was the reason your 2001 Volkswagen window kept falling into the door? Because now you do. The next story is already waiting, and it's just as ugly. Stay curious, trust nobody, and check your door seals.